Friends, on this video, I want to tell you in as brief as I can the story of Mother Sweet. You will notice I have a photograph of Dr. Norris, Mother Sweet, and Mrs. J. Frank Norris as they visited China. I believe it was in the year of 1927. I have included this picture in my book that you'll see on my left. So the story of Mother Sweet, the legacy of J. Frank Norris would not be complete without proper recognition of a whole host of people. And included among those would be none other than Mother Sweet, as she was affectionately called. And at one time or another, I hope, in the process of time, to convey to you the many, many people whose paths I crossed. Some of them I knew personally, some of them I knew of them, but I want to tell you their story. But this story that I'm telling you tonight, there's no compelling story that can compare with the story of Mother Sweet. It is both a romantic and a heroic tale, worthy of historic preservation. That's why that I present it on my videos. Mother Sweet, as she was affectionately known among her many admirers, was engaged to be married to Dr. W.S. Sweet. This happened probably about 1910, a long time ago. I want to hasten the story on so that you may know the rest of the story. As Paul Harvey used to say, Dr. Sweet and Mother Sweet indeed became husband and wife and spent the better part of their life as missionaries to China. But before the wedding was consummated, Dr. Sweet, William, as his first name, confided to his soon-to-be bride that his lifelong desire to answer the call as a missionary was asking too much of a sacrifice to ask of his bride-to-be, knowing of the rigors which lie ahead. Upon hearing of his explanation to cancel their engagement, Mother Sweet said to William she had been thinking of doing the very same thing, for she herself was planning to call off the marriage, knowing that her great desire was to go to that far-off land of China as a missionary. Now, the rest of the story was a life of dedication, enduring for over 40 years until the passing of Mother Sweet in the mid-1940s. And I believe that they were natives of the state of Wisconsin. I'm not too sure about that, but I think this is the case. In the mid-1930s, Mother Sweet severed relationship with her home mission board, church, of which she received support. But due to the encroachment of modernism that was infiltrating the churches during this period, Mother Sweet severed her relationship with the Northern Baptist Convention. And friends, let me just add this little side note. If you doubt that modernism was not a threat to the great churches of the North, I was in flight training in Burlington, Vermont in 1944, attending the First Baptist Church. And the preacher was so modernistic. And of course at that time I was so naive that I sat like a little child, dumbfounded, as he tried to explain the creation of man, relating how that from a little amoeba we became a tadpole, and then, to make a long story short, we descended from monkeys. Looking back at that, that's a sad state of affairs. Now that's what Mother Sweet was talking about when she gave up and severed her relationship with the Northern Baptist Convention. She then became aware of the ministry of J. Frank Norris, from whom she then began to receive support, joining forces later on with two young missionaries who joined her in the mid-1940s. Now the heroics of Mother Sweet are this: happened in 1937, long after the death of her husband and prior to the outbreak of World War II. The Japanese Empire had already begun a merciless bombardment of the coastal region in and around the city of Hangzhou, and that's where Mother Sweet worked in that territory, as well as Shanghai. But through it all, Mother Sweet refused offers of evacuation, as thousands of people were being put to death. Many did choose to come back to the United States, but rather, instead of coming back, Mother Sweet chose to suffer alongside the people that she had learned to love, the Chinese. And true to her faith, one day she positioned herself on the outskirts of the city with her Bible in hand and her eyes toward heaven. She was an easy target for the Japanese pilots. When word reached the Japanese headquarters inquiring about this strange woman, orders were given to cease the bombing of Hangzhou. Now, some people would call that a miracle, but friends, that's what's known as the providence of God. Not a miracle, but it's providence, and that's the way that God sometimes works in mysterious ways. And it's amazing of how that the testimony of this one little lone woman changed the course of the war. Now, two other persons of interest are an integral part of the Mother Sweet story. The name of one, of which I have produced a video on his life story in a very brief manner, but I want to mention it one more time. The name John Birch received prominence by virtue of the John Birch Society, named so in memory of John Birch, who was killed at the conclusion of World War II on a mission to make contact with the Chinese communists in the north. But the real John Birch began with his association with Mother Sweet. And he, along with Reverend Oscar Wells, another missionary of note who sailed with John Birch from the United States in July of 1940. And had it not been for the outbreak of World War II, the mission efforts of Mother Sweet, John Birch, and Oscar Wells, their efforts would have had a much more happy ending. But as we know, the onslaught of the war upset the plans of most everyone. On another video, I have told you in brief of the real John Birch story. And while his missionary efforts were curtailed to a great extent, that's why he went to China as a missionary, the remaining years of John Birch were spent as an intelligent officer for the famous Flying Tigers. Dr. John Rawlings, pastor, or at least he's the former pastor in Cincinnati, Ohio, is quoted saying that General Chenault claimed that John Birch, more than any other one man, was responsible in winning the war in the Pacific. And so, friends, his true life story is yet to be told. And I would hope that someone would take note and really tell the story that the American people deserve to hear. Now, another name of interest that was an associate of Mother Sweet was Oscar Wells, who remained with Mother Sweet, refusing to accept evacuation from that war-torn country. However, these two later were interned by the Japanese. locked up for 2 years. But thanks to the interest of J. Frank Norris and his influence with high officials in the State Department, he aided in the release and the final departure from China. And I might add, in reference to Dr. Oscar Wells, now deceased, he is the father of Shannon Lucid, Shannon Wells Lucid. And you will remember her as the lady astronaut who spent 6 months in space about 10 years ago. Her first-hand information, no doubt, could add much in detail about these past episodes. What I've related to is only a tip of the iceberg, and I trust that more information will be forthcoming. May God bless each one. Pass the word on, and as I said, this picture will appear on my blog. So not only look at my videos, also see the J. Frank Norris Historical Society. Good night. God bless America. Thank you, and good night.